Companionship. Everyone craves it. The feeling of having that one person with whom you can experience life's highs and lows with and spend your time with is out of this world, and if you find them, then you're a winner in life. Over 300 million people use dating apps to find their other halves, and one of them was 31-year-old Danielle Finlay Jones, who just wanted to experience long-lasting romantic love for herself. But fate had something else in store for her, and on December 17th of 2022, Danielle wouldn't get to experience butterflies in her stomach and love, but rather something utterly tragic and horrific. The case of Danielle Finlay Jones is not only frightening and tragic, but it's also a glaring example of the justice system failing to keep people safe. Welcome to True Crime Stories. If you're new here, I post new true crime cases every single week. So if you want some good old-fashioned true crime documentaries, hit that subscribe button. It's totally free and will keep you up to date with all of my future videos. Danielle Finlay Jones was born in 1991. Her family was made up of her parents, Graham and Jackie, and her brother, Blake. Danielle's friends described her as a powerhouse, and she made friends very easily. She attended Sylvania High School in New South Wales, and she graduated in 2009. Afterwards, she went on to complete her studies in community services, children's services, education support, and education for autistic children, and had earned several certifications and diplomas throughout that time. Danielle loved working with children, and at the time of the case, she was a teacher at Trinity Preschool, and she was also a student learning support officer for the New South Wales Department of Education. Danielle was also a football enthusiast, so much so that she had dedicated 25 years of her life to this sport. Ever since she was young, Danielle loved playing football, and she played for the Ramsgate RSL Football Club, and she served as a player, a coach, a volunteer, as well as an administrator. She played with mixed teams and was an advocate for high female participation in sports like football, having closely worked with multiple associations and committees having the same vision and goals. Danielle, being almost a lifelong part of the Ramsgate RSL Football Club, even served as senior vice president for the club at one point. In 2019, she celebrated her 25 years of service milestone with Ramsgate, and she was even given a lifetime membership. Despite her young age, Danielle was living in Kogarah, New South Wales, with her mom at the time of the case, and she had an amazing relationship with her mother and her brother. Danielle spent most of her free time with her mom, Jackie, and the two were each other's best friends. They would go to local pubs on weekends and have a great time in each other's company. Danielle had a very busy life. On the weekdays, she would teach children, and on the weekends, she would dedicate her time to sports and catch up with friends. By all accounts, Danielle was living her best life. She was an active, social, and loving person working a job that she loved and was passionate about, and football was pretty much a personality trait for her. But Danielle wanted to settle down permanently. She was 31 and was at a point in her life where she wanted something serious. So she resorted to dating apps to find her life partner, and it didn't take long for Danielle to meet someone, 33-year-old Ashley Gaddy. Not much is known about Ashley or his upbringing, but what we do know is that Ashley had cut off all contact with his father, Ian Gaddy, 5 years before meeting Danielle. Ashley was a tradesman, living in Five Dock in Sydney with his mom, and from the looks of his dating profile, it seemed like he loved adventure, was successful in his career, and also looked for a serious relationship. His neighbors also defined him as a cool and calm guy who was helpful. These qualities piqued Danielle's interests, and fast forward to early December of 2022, and the couple had gone on 2 dates. Danielle and Ashley seemed to click right away, and the two quickly began a relationship, even though they only went on a few dates. Danielle had a good feeling about Ashley. According to Taylor Joseph, Danielle's best friend, Ashley and Danielle were very compatible. Ashley was unlike any other man that Danielle had met before. He had a dominant and commanding personality and always challenged Danielle, which she enjoyed. Their relationship took a more serious turn because Ashley had actually met Jackie, Danielle's mom. Now, for some people this might be normal, but for Danielle, this was a big step in their relationship, as Ashley was the first boyfriend she ever introduced to her family and friends. So it's safe to say that Danielle and Ashley were making things official. According to Jackie, Ashley seemed like a nice guy, and he and Danielle seemed to just click. They were always smiling, and Ashley was very attentive towards her. But things aren't always what they seem, and on December 17th of 2022, everything would change for the worse. On Saturday, December 17th, 2022, Danielle and Ashley went on their third date, which was an annual Christmas get-together, and Danielle's friends were going to be there too. The get-together was held at the Marsden Brewhouse, a local pub in Marsden Park in New South Wales. This was the first time Danielle's close friends met Ashley, so it was a huge moment for her, and she wanted them to like it. As the party was commenced, things were going smoothly. According to Danielle's friends, she was genuinely very happy with Ashley and enjoyed his company, and her friends were over the moon for her because Danielle had finally found someone who made her genuinely happy. During the party, the group also played a bunch of drinking games, and this was where Danielle's friends noticed some very bizarre behavior. It was during a card game where Danielle had to answer a question about whether she had ever had a one-night stand. She answered in the affirmative, and this seemed to really infuriate Ashley. He was fuming, and he immediately confronted Danielle about it in front of her friends, claiming that he wasn't aware of this. The argument escalated to the point where Ashley left the table and was bombarding Danielle with rageful messages, calling her a liar. Now, understandably, Danielle's friends were confused and concerned, as Ashley's reaction was very angry, and they didn't expect that from him at all. But Danielle, in hopes of diffusing the situation, got up from the table and spoke to Ashley for about 20 minutes. Apparently, Danielle had calmed Ashley down, they'd made up, and the couple approached the table, resuming their affectionate and loving gestures. Soon after midnight, the group called it a night, and Danielle, her best friend Taylor, and Ashley went to Taylor's home, which was located in Cranebrook, to spend the night. At around 1 to 1:30 a.m., Taylor and her partner went to bed, after setting up the spare bedroom for Danielle and Ashley to sleep in. The four went to sleep, but in the middle of the night, Taylor's partner woke her up, because he'd heard noises coming from the spare bedroom. The noises weren't alarming by any means. In fact, they sounded almost passionate. So Taylor and her partner assumed that Danielle and Ashley were they laughed it off and went back to bed thinking nothing of it. In the morning hours of December 18th, which was Sunday, Taylor woke up, but Danielle hadn't come out from the bedroom. Taylor initially thought that Danielle had too much to drink the night before and was probably just sleeping her hangover off since it was a Sunday, so she decided not to disturb her. But morning turned into afternoon, and Taylor still hadn't heard from Danielle, so this prompted her to check up on Danielle, whose room was eerily quiet. At around 2:30 p.m., Taylor knocked on the bedroom door a few times, and when she didn't get a response from Danielle, she opened the door and saw that the bed was empty. When Taylor made it to the other side of the bed, she saw Danielle on the floor. But what was odd was the fact that Danielle's entire body from head to toe was covered with a blanket. Taylor, with her heart beating out of her chest, removed the blanket, and what she saw traumatized her for life. Danielle was motionless on the floor with bruising and blood on her face. Taylor couldn't believe her eyes. Her mind was in a state of disbelief and utter shock. She couldn't do anything for a few minutes except call out Danielle's name over and over, willing her to wake up. Taylor, after registering the fact that she'd found her best friend in that state in her own home, snapped out of the shock and called the police and emergency services. While the investigators were on their way, Taylor and her partner were both thinking the same thing, and that was, where's Ashley? The couple searched the entire house, but Ashley was nowhere to be found. This fact solidified their fears even more. Taylor knew that Ashley was the only person with Danielle, and he definitely had something to do with what happened to her. When detectives arrived, they found 31-year-old Danielle, and she was unfortunately pronounced dead at the scene. The investigators added that Danielle passed away about 8 hours ago. And what's so chilling is that a coroner believes that Danielle likely lost her life around the same time that Taylor and her partner heard the odd noises coming from her bedroom, which is so heartbreaking to know. Danielle's body was taken for an autopsy, while Taylor notified detectives that Ashley, Danielle's boyfriend, was the last person to be with her, and he was now nowhere to be found. Taylor also told the investigators about the fight the couple had in the pub, and the police knew that Ashley was certainly behind Danielle's brutal passing. The house was taped off and was tested for evidence, and it didn't take long for the police to find something. In the spare bedroom where Danielle and Ashley were, there were fingerprints on the glass window. They belonged to none other than Ashley Gaddy. The investigators theorized that after fatally attacking Danielle, he escaped the house through that bedroom window. Detectives now not only were looking for a murderer, but also a runaway. Meanwhile, Danielle's autopsy results came out, and they were disturbing and horrible. Danielle's cause of death was manual strangulation, blunt force trauma, and suffocation. It's believed that Ashley straddled and overpowered Danielle on the bed and suffocated her while continuously striking her face. The idea of Danielle being so happy to have met someone that she meshed so well with, and for it all to fall apart like this, is just depressing. After all of this, the police immediately issued a warrant for Ashley Gaddy, while Danielle's family was informed of her passing. Danielle's mom, Jackie, did not believe what she was hearing at first. She was struck with unimaginable grief that her vibrant and loving daughter was gone. Danielle's brother Blake was just as inconsolable. But Jackie and Blake put their grief on the back burner because they wanted the investigators to catch the person who was responsible for all of this. Jackie and Blake thought that the justice system wouldn't fail Danielle, and that the perpetrator would be punished for their heinous crime. The search for Ashley was 2 days long. In fact, the police even tried to find out Ashley's whereabouts and possibly get a confession out of him by intercepting a phone call between him and his mother. During this call, Ashley maintained his innocence, stating that the couple had slept together, and when he woke up, Danielle was bruised and bleeding from the nose, and this caused him to panic, and that's why he ran away. Now, this obviously is ridiculous. Even if we assume that Ashley had nothing to do with Danielle's passing, anyone would have called the police immediately. Why was his first thought to run? It just makes him look all the more guilty. Literally no one would have acted this way. But anyway, the investigators were able to successfully track down Ashley's location through that phone call, and it was found that he was hiding out in a remote area in the Blue Mountains. The police immediately went to the Blue Mountains on Tuesday, December 20th, but catching Ashley wasn't going to be easy. See, Ashley had climbed over the safety barrier on top of a cliff at Fletcher's Lookout. He was close enough to the cliff that the detectives couldn't catch him, but safe enough that he wouldn't slip and fall. Now, this was a very sensitive situation for the police. They knew that Ashley was volatile and that he would do anything to evade the law, even jump off the mountain, which was easily a 100-meter drop. So a negotiating team was called to the scene immediately to calm Ashley down and prevent him from making any irrational decisions. The negotiators spoke with Ashley for 12 hours, and everyone was on edge. The investigators knew that if Ashley jumped off, they would have no chance to bring him to court to face the consequences for what he did to Danielle, and her family would never get the closure they desperately needed. Finally, after 12 hours on December 21st, 2022, at around 12:30 a.m., Ashley Gaddy gave in, and he was pulled up to safety before immediately being handcuffed, arrested, and charged by New South Wales police for the murder of Danielle Finlay Jones. Danielle's family was relieved that Ashley was finally behind bars and that he was going to face the law. But the police, as well as everyone who was following Danielle's case, were struck with another horrific piece of information about Ashley. It turned out that he hid a dark and terrible secret behind his good guy facade. See, when Ashley got arrested, the detectives dug into his past and wondered whether he had a criminal record or any charges against him. And to the police's horror, Ashley had a very violent past, and sadly, Danielle wasn't the only woman he had attacked. It turned out that Ashley was a serial abuser, and he had a long history of domestic violence against women, having appeared in court a staggering 46 times. In fact, in between the years of 2016 and 2021, 5 women had taken out protection orders against him. It's so frightening to think that Danielle was unknowingly dating a violent and dangerous man, and sadly, she became his first murder victim. Ashley was also the father of a child from a relationship that he'd had with a woman in 2015. But according to the baby's mother, Ashley had lost interest with this child and had little to do with him since. But let's be honest, from the sound of things, that was probably for the best. When Ashley's name was featured on the news in relation to his involvement in Danielle's untimely passing, an ex-girlfriend of Ashley's came forward with her own horrific experience about him. In 2021, Ashley was actually convicted of assault after stalking and deliberately attacking his ex-girlfriend, Rachel. According to Rachel, Ashley had reached out to her via Facebook, and the two started dating. Initially, Ashley was loving and caring, and showered her with compliments and attention. But soon, his violent and narcissistic nature came out, and he would control, manipulate, and abuse her on various occasions. In July of 2021, Ashley showed up at Rachel's father's house where Rachel was living. He attacked her and even tried to strangle her at one point. Ashley even punched a wall, and Rachel narrowly escaped him after barricading herself into a room. Luckily, Rachel's father noticed the commotion and called the police. Ashley was then arrested for assault and damage to the property. Rachel went on to say that she also told the people in court that Ashley would reoffend again and that he was very dangerous. But shockingly, the judge decided that Ashley was a low-risk individual and he was only sentenced to community service, which is just baffling. But that wasn't all. Ashley was arrested again in 2022 on charges of assault, and this time he actually spent some time in prison before being released on bail just 6 months before he crossed paths with Danielle. But the bigger question here is, how many women did Ashley actually target? Just because a few women spoke out, that doesn't mean every woman spoke out. Many victims are terrified into silence, so there's no telling how many victims Ashley truly had. Danielle's family were looking forward to Ashley's trial, as this was the only way to seek justice for Danielle and to ensure that a violent monster like Ashley stayed behind bars forever. But Ashley would rob Danielle's family of this last ray of hope too, in one final act of devastation. On April 6th of 2024, 16 months after he was arrested and charged for Danielle's murder, while he was incarcerated at the Clarence Correctional Facility, Ashley was found lifeless in his jail cell by prison staff. He was unresponsive and couldn't be revived. While the details of Ashley ending his life are still under wraps, it's believed that he ended his own life at around 4 p.m. that day. When Danielle's family was informed of Ashley's successful attempt at taking his own life, her mom Jackie crumbled to the ground. The emotions and the grief that she had bottled up for 16 months in hopes that Danielle's murderer would be punished by the law all came out, and she was left hopeless and crestfallen. This news devastated Danielle's family to no end because there was no way for Danielle to get justice anymore, at least not in this life. To this day, Ashley never provided an explanation or motive for tragically ending Danielle's life. Was he simply jealous of Danielle? Was it Ashley's ego that led him to fatally attack Danielle? Or was he looking for another victim to hurt with his violent behavior? Sadly, Danielle's family will never get these answers. My personal best guess is that this all boils down to the claims that Danielle made about that one-night stand, but this is just a guess. But if Ashley is as controlling and narcissistic as he seems to be, I don't think this assumption is too crazy to believe. But Danielle's family is not going to let her demise go in vain. They've decided to become a voice for change regarding strengthening of laws that concern domestic violence. The justice system brutally failed not only Danielle but other victims of Ashley as well by letting him out in the public for doing something so heinous and life-altering. If only the justice system had taken Ashley's offenses seriously, the circumstances could have been different. Instead, the courts decided to let a vile and disgusting monster out, and he went on to destroy a close-knit and happy family forever. Jackie and Blake are advocating for transparency and for stricter laws about who can use dating apps. According to Blake, background checks in dating apps are necessary, and I couldn't agree more. Dating apps are incredibly dangerous, and I cannot emphasize this enough. These apps are terrifying because anyone can say anything and pretend to be whoever they want to be. The internet as a whole is still largely in its Wild West phase. You can say I'm wrong all you want, but I just don't believe the internet is the best place to shop around for a spouse, at least not in its current state. Jackie and Blake's lives completely changed when Danielle was taken from them in such a vicious and unexpected way. Jackie's highlight was to see her daughter walk through the front door after a long day of work, but sadly, Jackie would never get to sit down with her daughter, spend time with her, or see her daughter on a football field ever again. As a tribute to Danielle and her services in teaching, Bates Drive Special School planted a memorial garden with lots of rosemary, football sculptures, and greenery, which is the embodiment of Danielle's personality. It's located in Kareela in southern Sydney. Jackie and Blake say that they've spent a lot of time here to connect with Danielle and talk to her, and this was such an amazing installment for the school to have created. The truth is, as time passes by, many people at this school likely won't even remember who Danielle is. But for her family, this garden has offered them so much more than they could have ever asked for, and was such a massive step forward in her family seeking some level of closure. The Ramsgate RSL Football Club also constructed a memorial bench in memory of Danielle, and Jackie brings roses to the bench every time she visits and scatters rose petals on it, as Beauty and the Beast was her daughter's favorite movie. Kind of one of those if you know things. Even though Danielle's case ended in double injustice, her family is actively trying to make changes in the law regarding domestic violence. Change takes a lot of time, especially when it comes to new laws and regulations, but I certainly hope that immediate measures are taken to ensure the safety of women and everyone from domestic violence all over the world, but particularly in the world of online dating. Finding your significant other on dating apps can be fun and exciting, but it can also be very dangerous since you don't really know who the person is on the other side of the screen. If you can, run a background check on your potential date before meeting up. I know this is so over the top and seems like such an overprotective dad thing to say, but I mean it. And always go to public places rather than meeting at someone's house or a remote area, because at the end of the day, nothing matters more than your own safety and peace of mind. And I hope that for every person watching this video, hearing Danielle's story, it gives you some small amount of perspective. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple new channel members, including Not Your Mom and Peggy Breidenbach. If you also want to become a channel member, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public, and it's currently the best way you can help support the channel and help out. I really appreciate those of you that have decided to do that. If you want to join, you can click that big join button below the video, or find the link down in the description. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and keeps you up to date with all of my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.